Another example. Also find the center, principal axis, vertices, endpoints of conjugate axis, foci, asymptotes, eccentricity, and equations of directrices of the hyperbola y plus 1 quantity squared over 144 minus x plus 3 quantity squared over 25 equals 1. The equation is of the form y minus k quantity squared over a squared minus x minus h quantity squared over b squared equals 1. The principal axis is parallel to y-axis and we use the equation x equals h. H is equal to negative 3. Remember, kung nasaan ang x, nandun ang h. While k is negative 1. Thus, the center is negative 3, negative 1. And the principal axis is parallel to y-axis, which is the line x equals h or x equals negative 3. The vertices are h, k plus and minus a. Since the principal axis is parallel to y-axis. This will be the endpoints of conjugate axis, the foci, the directrices, and the asymptotes. But first, we need to find a, b, and c. A squared is 144 and b squared is 25. Thus, a is equal to 12. Square root of 144 is 12, while b is 5. Square root of 25 is 5. So the vertices are negative 3, negative 1, plus and minus 12. And these are negative 3, 11, and negative 3, negative 13. Copy negative 3 and simplify. Negative 1 plus 12 is positive 11, and negative 1 minus 12 is negative 13. So the vertices are negative 3, 11, and negative 3, negative 13. While the endpoints of conjugate axis are h plus and minus b, k, where h is equal to negative 3, b is 5, and k is negative 1. So the endpoints of conjugate axis are 2, negative 1, and negative 8, negative 1. Negative 3 plus 5 is positive 2, and negative 3 minus 5 is negative 8. And we copy negative 1. To determine the foci, we solve for c, where a squared is 144 and b squared is 25. 144 plus 25 is 169, and square root of 169 is 13. So c is 13. Thus, the foci are h, k plus and minus c, or negative 3, negative 1 plus and minus 13, which are negative 3, 12, and negative 3, negative 14. Copy negative 3 and simplify. Negative 1 plus 13 is positive 12, and negative 1 minus 13 is negative 14. Next, find the asymptotes. We use y equals k plus and minus a over b times x minus h, where k is negative 1, a is 12, b is 5, and h is negative 3. But negative times negative is positive, kaya plus 3 dito. So the asymptotes are y equals negative 1 plus 12 over 5 times x plus 3, and y equals negative 1 minus 12 over 5 times x plus 3. Simplify, we distribute 12 over 5 to x plus 3. First, we copy y equals negative 1. 12 over 5 times x is 12 over 5x. 12 over 5 times 3 is positive 36 over 5. 12 times 3 is 36 over 5. Combine the constant terms, negative 1 and positive 36 over 5. So we have y equals 12 over 5x plus 31 over 5. Negative 1 plus 36 over 5 is 31 over 5. 5 times negative 1 is negative 5 plus 36 is positive 31 over 5. Same process, distribute negative 12 over 5 to x plus 3. So we have y equals negative 1. Negative 12 over 5 times x is negative 12 over 5x. And negative 12 over 5 times 3 is negative 36 over 5. Negative 12 times 3 is negative 36, then copy the denominator, which is 5. Combine negative 1 and negative 36 over 5, so we have y equals negative 12 over 5x minus 41 over 5. 5 times negative 1 is negative 5 minus 36 is negative 41 over 5. So the asymptotes are y equals 12 over 5x plus 31 over 5 and y equals negative 12 over 5x minus 41 over 5. The eccentricity is 13 over 12 or 1.1, while the directrices are y equals k plus and minus a squared over c, where k is negative 1, a squared is 144, and c is 13. And these are y equals negative 1 plus 144 over 13, and y equals negative 1 minus 144 over 13. Negative 1 plus 144 over 13 is equal to 131 over 13. 13 times negative 1 is negative 13 plus 144 is 131 over 13. This is approximately equal to 10.1. Well, negative 1 minus 144 over 13 is negative 157 over 13. 13 times negative 1 is negative 13 minus 144 is negative 157 over 13, which is approximately equal to negative 12.1. We can now sketch the graph with center at negative 3, negative 1, vertices negative 3, positive 11, and negative 3, negative 13. While the endpoints of conjugate axis are 2, negative 1, and negative 8, negative 1. Next, draw a rectangle, and then the asymptotes. We can now sketch the branches of hyperbola at each vertex separately. The foci are negative 3, positive 12, and negative 3, negative 14. And the directrices are y equals 10.1 and y equals negative 12.1. And this is now the graph of the equation y plus 1 quantity squared over 144 minus x plus 3 quantity squared over 25 equals 1. Example number 3. Find the standard equation of the hyperbola with vertices at negative 3, 1, and 5, 1, and passing through the point negative 5, 3. First, plot the vertices negative 3, 1, and 5, 1 to determine the focal axis or principal axis, and it is parallel to the x-axis. Thus, we use the equation x minus h quantity squared over a squared minus y minus k quantity squared over b squared equals 1. Next, we need to find the center to determine the value of h and k. The center of the hyperbola is the midpoint of the line segment of the vertices. Now, to determine the center, first we need to count the distance of the vertices. And the distance of this point to this point is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 units, which is also the length of the transverse axis. Remember, the center is the midpoint of the vertices, so we divide 8 by 2, and that is equal to 4. which is also the value of a. So from this point, we count 4 units to the right. And from this point, we also count 4 units to the left. Therefore, the center is at 1 and 1, where h is equal to 1 and k is also equal to 1. Since we have a, which is 4, a squared is equal to 16. 4 squared is 16. Now the problem is, we don't have b. However, we have a given point, -5, 3. This means we can replace these values into the equation where x is equal to -5 and y is 3. So we replace x with -5 and y with 3. Simplify, -5 minus 1 is -6 squared over 16 minus 3 minus 1 is 2 squared over b squared equals 1. -6 squared is 36 and 2 squared is 4. 36 over 16 can still be simplified in its lowest form, which is 9 over 4. 36 divided by 4 is 9, while 16 divided by 4 is 4. Sa isang side ng equation, dapat nandun ang may b squared term. Since negative ang value dito, we transpose -4 over b squared to the right side para mag-positive ang sign niya. At itong 1 sa right side ay itra-transpose naman natin sa left side. Thus, we have 9 over 4 minus 1 equals 4 over b squared. From -4 over b squared to +4 over b squared, and from +1 to -1. Simplify the left side. 9 over 4 minus 1 is 5 over 4. 4 times 1 is 4, and 9 minus 4 is 5 over 4. Next, we cross-multiply. 5 times b squared is 5b squared, and 4 times 4 is 16. Divide the equation by 5, so b is 16 over 5. Thus, we replace b squared by 16 over 5. And this is now the standard equation of the hyperbola. Another example. Write the equation of the hyperbola in standard form with center at 7, -2, vertex at 2, -2, and one of the endpoints of conjugate axis is at 7, -6. First, plot the points. The center, 7, -2, is located here. One of the vertices has coordinates 2, -2. And one of the endpoints of conjugate axis is 7, -6. Remember, the center, the vertex, or the focus are located on the focal axis or principal axis. So if we're going to connect the vertex and the center, the focal axis is horizontal or parallel to x-axis. So the equation is x minus h quantity squared over a squared minus y minus k quantity squared over b squared equals 1. Since the given points are the vertex and the endpoint of conjugate axis, we have the value of a and b. To find a, we count the distance from the vertex to the center. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units. Therefore, a is equal to 5. For b, we count the distance between the center and the endpoint of conjugate axis, which is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4 units. So b is equal to 4. By substitution, the equation of the hyperbola is x minus 7 quantity squared over 25 minus y plus 2 quantity squared over 16 equals 1. H is 7, while k is -2. And negative times -2 is +2. 5 squared is 25, while 4 squared is 16. And that is all about hyperbola with center at hk.